do, and Logan is a prick who is just trying to throw his money around to try and repair his rep.
Stand up. Stand up. Stand over here.
Why?
Stand over here. Let me see your hands.
Chris Bankhead Jr. broke down on camera, and the raw emotion in his voice cut through everything else happening in boxing right now. This wasn't some calculated media moment or carefully crafted statement from a PR team. This was real pain, the kind that comes from living through something that fundamentally changes who you are as a person. When he spoke about what fighters go through, you could hear decades of experience in every word. The sleepless nights, the constant pressure, the way this sport chews people up and spits them out when they're no longer useful. Bankhead knows what it's like when life hits you harder than any punch you've ever taken in the ring. He's felt that specific terror when everything you've built suddenly hangs by a thread. And when he talked about the difference between people who have actually lived through hell and those who just comment from their keyboards, something shifted in the boxing community. Because his words exposed something ugly about how we consume tragedy in this sport. But here's where this story gets absolutely wild. Anthony Joshua is trying to heal from injuries that go way beyond what any scan can show. We're talking about physical damage, sure, but the mental side is what's really destroying fighters right now. While Joshua's dealing with the aftermath of his accident, the boxing world is holding its breath waiting for the other shoe to drop. And trust me, there are a lot of shoes about to drop. Logan and Jake Paul are surrounded by doubt that's growing stronger every single day. You can see it in how they're handling their social media, how their teams are controlling the narrative, how carefully they're choosing their words. Something's coming, and everyone in their circle knows it. The truth is sitting somewhere in private messages, phone records, and conversations we haven't heard yet. Documents that could change everything we think we know about what really happened.
Story in half.
Two officials in Nigeria, they ran into a stationary truck while trying to change lanes on the roads. Just a horrific accident. You know, I don't want to start, assigning blame to something that I don't have the report for.
And that's where we're stuck, suspended living.
The end of this story is already written, and it's not pretty. If things keep following this trajectory, we're not just talking about temporary damage to reputations. We're looking at the complete destruction of legacies that took decades to build. Just hours before everything went sideways, Joshua was living his normal life, making jokes with his training partners, planning his next fight, probably thinking about vacation spots or what car to buy next. The kind of confidence that comes from years of success, from believing you're untouchable. At the exact same time, rumors were spreading through boxing circles that Logan and Jake Paul were being investigated by federal authorities, not some social media drama or YouTube controversy. Real FBI attention, the kind that destroys lives and sends people to prison. When I first heard about it, I thought someone was exaggerating for clicks. But then one accident tore through the boxing world like a tornado, and suddenly every major name connected to this mess started acting nervous. You can see it in their carefully worded statements, the way they're avoiding certain topics, how their lawyers are probably working overtime right now.
Thank God he didn't have a seatbelt on. I never say that. Thank God he didn't have a fucking seatbelt on, because if he did,
There's no way.
he would be dead.
Everything feels different now, like the air itself has changed, and everyone's walking on eggshells. Joshua's accident triggered questions that powerful people definitely don't want to answer. Questions about timing, about financial connections, about who knew what and when they knew it. The boxing community expected the Paul brothers to show some basic human decency, maybe post something respectful about a fellow fighter going through hell. Instead, their responses came across as cold and calculated, like they were more worried about protecting themselves than showing empathy for someone who almost died. That's when my gut started telling me something was seriously wrong. In boxing, timing reveals everything about a person's character. The difference between stepping up when things get real and running for cover when the heat gets too intense. And bad timing doesn't just look suspicious, it becomes part of your legacy forever. Deep down, I can't shake the feeling that someone in this story knows way more than they're admitting. They're sitting on information that could explain everything, but they're keeping quiet for reasons we don't understand yet.
For them and the family, anything they need, you know, sometimes when someone is a star, they have a lot of things in their life taken care of for them. So you really have to move into that mode in this situation as well. Make sure obviously they're getting the best medical attention, make sure their family are safe and happy.
Anthony Joshua injured in car accident. 2 people who I believe were with Anthony Joshua were friends of his have tragically passed away. Before I carry on reading the article, the 2 people who have tragically passed, my condolences is all I can say to their friends and families. We'll definitely offer up some prayers for them.
Then Logan Paul posted that tweet and the entire mood shifted. His words were too casual, too flippant for something this tragic and serious, like he was commenting on a movie instead of a real person's life-threatening accident. The response was immediate and brutal. Thousands of comments flooded in from fans who couldn't believe what they were reading. People started connecting dots that maybe shouldn't be connected, but once those connections form in the public mind, they become impossible to erase. When 2 brothers who are already drowning in controversy react this way after a respected fighter like Joshua nearly dies, people start asking uncomfortable questions. They start looking at timelines, at business relationships, at who benefits from what. And once that paranoia takes hold in the boxing community, it spreads like wildfire. Compare that to Alexander Usyk's response, which showed the kind of genuine empathy and respect that defines a true champion. Watching Usyk's heartfelt message next to the Paul brothers' detached social media posts felt like witnessing 2 completely different species. One showed authentic human connection and concern for a fellow warrior. The other showed calculated image management and self-preservation. It's becoming crystal clear who actually belongs in this sport when things get serious, and who only thrives when the cameras are rolling and everything's going their way. Joe Rogan didn't chase clicks or manufacture drama like everyone else did in the aftermath. His reaction cut straight through all the noise and speculation with surgical precision. He looked at what happened to Joshua with the kind of clear perspective that only comes from understanding how brutal this sport really is. Rogan recognized how close Joshua came to losing everything that matters. Not just his career or his championship aspirations, but his health, his future, maybe even his life. That quiet, serious tone in his voice said more than 1,000 dramatic headlines could ever convey. No exaggeration for views, no wild theories for engagement. Just genuine human concern and the sobering reality check that everyone needed to hear. He reminded people what happens when a fighter's body meets the absolute limits of physics and human endurance. The brutal mathematics of mettle, speed, and impact combining in the worst possible way. While other commentators were building conspiracy theories and chasing viral moments, Rogan brought the conversation back to what actually matters. A human being who almost died is trying to recover, and that's bigger than any drama or controversy swirling around it.
In the stationary truck, I'm not sure about that, so I'm not going to report on that, but the truck was stationary. And Anthony Joshua's SUV struck the...
So here's where we stand right now. A respected champion is fighting for his recovery, while conspiracy theories and federal investigations swirl around the sport's biggest influencers. The Paul brothers' tone-deaf responses have damaged their credibility at the worst possible time, while real champions like Usyk and voices of reason like Rogan are showing what authentic leadership looks like. But this story is nowhere near finished. The anger and suspicion that's building in the boxing community doesn't just fade away when people get bored and move on to the next controversy. It sits there, growing stronger and more focused, until it explodes in ways nobody saw coming. And when that happens, when all these secrets and investigations finally come to light, you're going to want to be right here to see how it all unfolds. So drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think the Paul brothers' reactions were just poor timing, or is there something deeper going on here? If this breakdown helped you understand what's really happening behind the scenes, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell because this story is about to get a lot more intense. I'll see you in the next one.
In car accident, 2 people who I believe were with Anthony Joshua, were friends of his, have tragically passed away. Before I carry on reading the article, the two people who have tragically passed, my condolences is all I can say. To their friends and families, we'll definitely offer up some prayers for them.
Because what I'm about to tell you next will blow your mind and connect dots that nobody else is talking about. While everyone's focused on social media posts and public statements, there's a shadow network of connections running through this entire situation that goes deeper than anyone realizes. We're talking about financial partnerships, shared investors, and business deals that create conflicts of interest so massive they could explain every single strange reaction we've witnessed. Start with this: the Paul brothers aren't just random YouTubers who stumbled into boxing anymore. They're connected to investment groups and promotional companies that have tentacles reaching into every corner of combat sports. Money flows between these organizations in ways that would make your head spin, creating relationships where what's good for one fighter might be terrible for another. When Joshua's accident happened, it didn't just affect him personally. It sent shockwaves through betting markets, promotional schedules, and television deals worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Here's where it gets really interesting. 3 days before Joshua's accident, unusual betting patterns started showing up on several major sportsbooks. Not the kind of normal fluctuations you see when news breaks or fighters get injured during training. We're talking about massive money moving in directions that only make sense if someone knew something was about to happen. The kind of betting activity that triggers automatic investigations from gaming commissions and federal authorities who monitor for insider trading in sports. But wait, it gets worse. Remember how Logan Paul's response seemed so detached and calculated? Well, it turns out his media team had already prepared multiple versions of statements addressing potential incidents involving major heavyweight fighters. They had template responses ready to go for different scenarios, like they were planning for something to happen. That's not normal crisis management. That's preparation for specific events that haven't occurred yet. The FBI investigation that people whispered about isn't just some rumor anymore. Multiple sources inside the boxing industry are confirming that federal agents have been asking questions about cryptocurrency transactions, offshore betting accounts, and promotional contracts that might violate racketeering laws. When you're talking about RICO investigations in boxing, you're talking about organized crime-level stuff. The kind of charges that don't just end careers, they end freedom. And here's the part that should terrify everyone involved. Anthony Joshua's accident might not have been the target of whatever scheme was in motion. He might have just been collateral damage in something much bigger and more sinister. Think about it. If you're running illegal betting operations or manipulating fight outcomes, an unexpected accident involving a major heavyweight throws all your calculations into chaos. Suddenly, fights get canceled, betting lines shift dramatically, and patterns that were supposed to stay hidden become visible to investigators. Jake Paul's recent behavior makes a lot more sense when you view it through this lens. His sudden interest in taking boxing more seriously and distancing himself from certain business partners isn't about maturity or growth as a fighter. It's about legal liability and trying to separate himself from activities that could land him in federal prison. Watch how carefully he chooses his words now, how his lawyers are probably reviewing every single public statement before it goes out. The boxing community's anger isn't just about disrespectful social media posts anymore. People are starting to understand that they've been watching a sport that's been partially controlled by people who don't respect it, don't understand it, and might be actively corrupting it for personal gain. When fighters risk their lives in that ring, they deserve to know the outcomes are determined by skill, preparation, and heart, not by gambling syndicates and social media moguls playing games with their careers. Chris Bankhead Jr.'s emotional breakdown takes on a whole different meaning when you realize he might have been witnessing the systematic destruction of a sport he's devoted his life to. His tears weren't just about one tragic accident. They were about watching boxing being turned into entertainment for people who see fighters as disposable content creators instead of elite athletes putting everything on the line. The timeline of events becomes even more suspicious when you dig into the business relationships. Companies connected to the Paul brothers had been quietly acquiring stakes in various boxing-related businesses throughout the past year. Streaming platforms, equipment manufacturers, even medical facilities that treat fighter injuries. When you control multiple aspects of an industry, you have the power to influence outcomes in ways that aren't immediately obvious to regulators or fans. But here's what really should keep people awake at night. If federal investigators are looking into this situation, they're not just gathering evidence about past crimes. They're building cases that could take down entire networks of people who thought they were untouchable. RICO investigations don't target individuals, they target organizations. Everyone who participated, everyone who knew, everyone who benefited could be facing serious prison time. Alexander Usyk's genuine response to Joshua's accident highlights something crucial that's been lost in all this drama. Real fighters understand that what happens in that ring is sacred. When someone gets hurt, when someone almost dies, it affects the entire community because they all share the same risks every time they step through those ropes. The Paul brothers' inability to grasp that basic human connection reveals how far removed they are from the actual sport they claim to be part of. The investigation is apparently focusing on a specific pattern of behavior that federal prosecutors love to pursue. They're looking at whether certain individuals used their influence and insider knowledge to manipulate betting markets while simultaneously controlling or influencing the outcomes they were betting on. That's textbook racketeering, and it carries sentences that could put people away for decades. Joe Rogan's measured response becomes even more significant when you realize he probably knows more about what's really going on than he's saying publicly. His connections throughout combat sports mean he hears things that never make it to social media or traditional reporting. When someone with his knowledge and experience chooses to focus on the human element rather than the conspiracy theories, it suggests he understands the real stakes involved. The most disturbing part of this entire situation might be how close it came to being covered up completely. If Joshua's accident hadn't happened, if that random moment of physics and bad timing hadn't occurred, these investigations might have continued in secret while more fighters unknowingly participated in corrupted events. Sometimes it takes a tragedy to expose the rot that's been growing underneath the surface. Right now, lawyers representing multiple parties are probably working around the clock to distance their clients from anything that could be construed as criminal activity. Contracts are being reviewed, financial records are being scrubbed, and people who thought they were friends are suddenly treating each other like potential witnesses in federal court cases. The boxing world is holding its breath because everyone understands that what comes next could fundamentally change how the sport operates. If these investigations result in major convictions, it will send a message that combat sports can't be treated like playground games for rich influencers who think rules don't apply to them. But if the people involved manage to escape consequences through legal technicalities and expensive lawyers, it might signal that corruption has become so entrenched that it's essentially unstoppable. What makes this moment so crucial is that we're watching the sport decide what it wants to be going forward. Does boxing belong to the fighters who sacrifice everything for their craft, or does it belong to whoever has enough money and social media followers to buy their way in? Anthony Joshua's recovery isn't just about one fighter healing from his injuries. It's about the entire sport recovering from an infection that's been spreading through its core institutions for years.